You didn't say svelte. We're in New York. You say svelte. I am delighted to be here with you tonight. I've been delighted to be with you here the last 2 days, and it's been such an edifying experience to meet so many of you. There's a time in some people's lives that comes where other people want to honor you. They want to give you accolades. They maybe for noble purposes, maybe, no doubt, to inspire other people to do what you have done as a model. But the reality of the fact is that a person can be given a lot of accolades and a lot of awards. And they may have made a lot of achievements in business or in science or literary successes and all of the rest of it. But when it comes down to what really counts, those people with all those awards might not really be worthy, at least not in a perennial way, in a permanent way. I could do that this evening. I could provide you with a whole litany of successes and accomplishments of Frank Hanna. But I'll leave you to read that on your own in the material that's been provided for you and on the internet, of course, where we find all truth. But the truth this evening is that a literary of accomplishments does not ultimately mean what really counts in a person's life. That is character. And that is something that I can tell you about with regard to Frank Hanna. Now, I've known Frank for the better part of 30 years, maybe more. He's not that old, but we go back a long ways. And I remember in particular, one thing that stands out to me is that Frank was a participant in a documentary that the Acton Institute produced 20 years ago or so. He actually had dark hair at the time. We had good makeup artists then. And he spoke about the vocation of business. And what I want to point out, though, is that interestingly enough, in that documentary, which you can get on YouTube or Netflix or wherever it is, I don't know, look it up, The Call of the Entrepreneur. The other person, we interviewed 3 people to give examples of entrepreneurship. And one was a dairy farmer whose work was transforming poop into profit. And then there was Frank Hanna. And then there was Jimmy Lai. Jimmy Lai, you may know, many of you know by the expressions I just heard, you know that Jimmy Lai is one of the leading Catholic entrepreneurs in Hong Kong. He's a refugee from Shanghai, China. And he succeeded in building Apple Daily, which is the major newspaper in Hong Kong, and was arrested and has been in jail for now 5 years in solitary confinement. And the trial has come to an end. They've done the closing arguments, and they're waiting for the sentencing. The verdict will come out, and then there'll be the sentencing. In all of this time, it's been very difficult to get people to say anything. Even, I'm sorry to say, at times even the church has not spoken out as vigorously, at least not openly, as vigorously as one would have hoped. My friends, for the first time you're going to see something, because this just happened a few hours ago in Rome at the general audience with the Holy Father. Teresa Lai met Pope Leo XIII. She was not there for political purposes or to involve the Vatican in any kind of continuing controversies with China. The Vatican has its own problems dealing with China. She was only there for one purpose, and that was to pray and to ask for prayers for her husband. So before and I know I'm not taking any time out of Frank's schedule tonight, before you go to bed tonight, please say a prayer for Jimmy Lai and his family. But in that documentary, there was Frank Hanna discoursing on finances and everything which he knows so well. But I want to tell you about his character. I want to tell you about his devotion to his wife and to his family. And if you want to really hear enthusiasm, ask him about his grandchildren. A priest ministers to many people in the course of his ministry. And it is not always the case that when you're ministering to lay people, especially to laymen in business, that you do not find yourself as a priest challenged to become holier yourself. Frank Hanna is a man who lives what he talks about. He is, of course, a philanthropist, but what he gives is so much more than money. The list of boards of directors that he is on, it has to be legendary. And let me tell you, he does not go on those boards, and I know this personally because Frank has been on the board of the Acton Institute for more years than I can remember. He doesn't go on those boards to just sit there and eat the tuna salad. He's on those boards to dig in, to ask questions. And let me tell you something, in addition to the inspiration that he may provide this priest, he can also be a pain in the neck. Because he has that entrepreneur's ability to ask difficult questions. Those of you who run nonprofits, you need to get a guy like this. Because when he asks difficult questions, if you can answer them or you can spend some time probing the difficulty of it, you're going to learn the secret of building and making more efficient your ministry. There's no sense in being in a ministry just for piety's sake. You must be in the ministry for the well-being of other people. And that brings me to another point about Frank Hanna. One of the wonderful things about a businessman who incarnates his vocation, who speaks of his business as a vocation, shows a devotion that accomplishes two things. The first, and perhaps the most obvious, is it accomplishes profit-making. It accomplishes good accounting or sales or whatever the particular business happens to be. But this is the secret, and this is what you are about these few days. It also accomplishes the bringing together of piety, devotion to our Lord with that technique. And that's what Frank Hanna has emblemized for me. It is not to say something simple or little that in the course of the many debates that I have had with Frank over these 30-some years, that this Italian boy from Brooklyn, New York, recalls vividly a very energetic debate in a restaurant in Atlanta. I'm told that I pronounced that correctly. It's not Atlanta, as we would say in Brooklyn, Atlanta, over the quality of Southern cooking versus Southern Italian cooking. You have to know my mother was very particular and very provincial in her understanding of cooking. She learned how to cook from her mother, who cooked near Vesuvio, near Pompeii, in Italy. And when my mother heard that Sicilians put pignoli in their bracioli, this was not just a regional difference. This was an offense against the natural law. So when I'm sitting down in the South talking about Southern cooking with a man who is insisting that Southern cooking is worthy of praise and dignity. And I said, but you got grits. He said, have you ever really had grits? I said, yeah, that pasty stuff. He called the waiter over. He said, the father will have some grits. And what he told me was the difference between real grits and the stuff you get out of a box. Now, this is like the difference between Chef Boyardee and my mother's lasagna, right? And so tonight, it is an honor for me to introduce a friend of mine whose vocation has inspired my own ministry and my own apostolate, who has given a powerful witness to the world, not just in what he gives to other groups, but in the way he gives it, and more importantly, the way he lives it. I give you Frank Hanna, accompanied by Tim Busch.
Okay, guys. Now, those of you who were last year, I don't know, I'm not like Johnny Carson or anything, but last year was kind of ridiculous. You got Tom Monahan, sort of an introvert, 88 years old. He was 87 at the time. He says, I'm 87, Tim. And his soon-to-be wife was calling us on the phone.
I don't have a girlfriend calling me tonight.
No girlfriends. I don't have any girlfriends calling me. I told them don't call tonight. This is going to be funny, honey. This is all a joke. The whole thing's a joke. By the way, Rich, thanks for recognizing Steph. I never do, because she has been my wife for 40 years, and we just spent a week in Paris. You know, to keep up with what we have to do in our life. And she's always telling me, we got to calm down and calm down. I go, yes, yes, yes. By the way, we're going someplace next week. But anyway, we have fun. So let me tell you a little about Frank. And Father was very serious and all accurate. Father did an amazing presentation on Cardinal Pell just after he passed, one of his best, but he's a very good speaker. You know, Frank is an outstanding speaker. One of the best speeches in the history of the Napa Institute was this summer. We just sent it out last week. Just outstanding. I was in France when he gave his talk at the CIC, and Stephen Ford, who writes speeches for me, another couple guys you probably don't know, Vice President Pence, Charles Koch, Nikki Haley, you don't know those guys. And he said that was one of the best 5 speeches I've ever heard in my life, and he meant that. And so I've got to see this. I hope it was recorded. So Frank's very capable, but I said, you know, Frank, let's not go that way this year. Could I persuade you to let me interview you so we can have some fun? Because Frank and I go way back, and it started at the Lateran 20 years ago. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I see one young guy in the group. We're at a Papal Foundation reception. This one young guy that's over in the corner. I'm there. It's the first time I've been to the Papal Foundation. Steph wasn't with me. And my guardian angel says to me, you see that young man over there? Go over and introduce yourself to him, because you two are going to do great things together. So I walked over and I said, hey, Frank, my guardian angel said to come over here. I don't know who you are, but we're supposed to do great things together. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? 20 years. 15 years ago, Frank was the initial board member of the Napa Institute. And he can be more than a pain in the neck, Father. He's very challenging. But we've been on the Papal Foundation together, EWTN together, Catholic University of America together, the Busch School of Business together. Anything else? Did I miss? And Napa, of course, Napa Institute. And Napa Legal Institute. He's not been on the board, but he's been very assistant with us. So young people especially, speak to your guardian angel. They don't know what you want, but you tell them, and they can figure things out. And this has been the love affair that Frank and I have had. Now, he calls me his big brother. Now, when we met, I was about 45, 50 pounds more than I was today, so I don't know if that's why he called me his big brother. But I'm older than him. I don't know if that's why he calls me his big brother. He doesn't have a big brother. He's got a little brother. He's a really nice brother. But we've had a lot of fun with that over the years. And all of those problems that AI is trying to solve, we've already solved them. We've been in Rome at Antico Arco, Taverna Angelica. We got all these problems solved. I don't even know why they need AI. Do you know, Frank?
All you need's wine.
Yeah, wine. And vino veritas, right? So really, it's a pleasure to have Frank up here. And hey, don't make any mistake about it. Frank and I have had some serious disagreements, always in charity and love. But that's what love's all about, right? You don't just go along to get along. You challenge each other. And I'm the type of guy that never takes challenge too well, but I've learned to just shut up, listen to the thoughts, digest them, reframe them, and then try to take action on what was being suggested. So it's been a wonderful relationship, and that's why I'm honored to have him receive this beautiful award from the Napa Institute. So we're going to start with one of the most incredible accomplishments that he did was the now called Hanna Papyrus. And I think we're going to have a picture up here. I don't know if somebody can flip that up there. But he acquired this very important papyrus that was called the Bodmer Papyrus, but they renamed it because he acquired it for the benefit of the Vatican Library. So tell us about that, and especially, I think the best part of the story is the James Bond method of how you actually got it to the Vatican.
Well, just for clarity, it's called the Hanna Papyrus under protest because I asked them to change the name to Monteverbi Papyrus, and the secular community that has the protocols for how papyri are named did not accept that, so they needed a name of sort of provenance, if you will. So that's why, because I think of it as the mother of the word, papyrus. And that relates to one of the pages he's looking at. I'll tell you, I'll try to give, it's not exactly the TikTok version of the story, but it's a quick version of the story. In the 50s, there were 53 leaves, like that one that Pope Benedict's looking at right now. There were 53 leaves found in a jar in Egypt, dating to anywhere from about 175 to 250 or so A.D., which predates the oldest Bible we have. For some of you who know, there are two of the Bibles, Codex Vaticanus and Codex Sinaiticus, and they date to the early 300s. So this is now found anywhere from 100 to 150 years prior to that. And just to let you know, both Tim and I, we talk a lot about philanthropic strategy and where we think we ought to focus and that sort of thing. We have a lot of good conversations about it. Sometimes things just happen, and this just kind of fell out of the sky. I barely knew what a papyrus was. I knew it had something to do with paper, but I wasn't really sure what it was, and I get this call, and of course, like oftentimes happens in the church, they say, we're raising money for this. Pope Benedict is very interested in this. I'm getting called by the nuncio. I'm getting called from different people. And, of course, when I asked them how much they raised, it was about 1% of what they needed to raise, right? So it's like, oh, so you need it all. You haven't really been raising money. And it just didn't fit. I'd been really involved in education, as Tim has been, and it didn't really fit. But as I reflected on it, I thought, God came to earth one time. Jesus came and walked the earth. He gave us one prayer to pray. And these papyri had the oldest copy of it in the world. And the Pope is saying we need to have it in the Vatican because Christie's was going to auction it off. And who knows who was going to, some tycoon puts it on his mantelpiece or something. So anyway, it's the whole experience was filled with blessings, but what happened when we actually bought it in Switzerland from the library that had it, they kept it in the embassy there, the Vatican embassy. They had it surrounded by the Swiss guards. When it left the next day, they shut down the airport, brought it to Rome, shut down the runway, had police cars escorting it, helicopter overhead. They motor it in, and then they put it in the vault in the Vatican, and which is where it sits now. I can tell this story. This lasted long enough that it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. Anyway, when CBS came to do a special on the Vatican, they had, I think it was Morley Safer, looking at the papyrus. So I called the library the next day. I said, did y'all really let 60 Minutes, And they said, no, that was the replica. So, okay. But it was this wonderful, it was just all these, the way they treated it, it was like Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark. The first time we actually saw it, we're in the bowels of the Vatican, we're in the vault. And the cardinal at the time, who was head of the library, he held one of the leaves of it up in the light. And I just still remember this moment. He held it up in the light, held it up like in front of that, right there. And you can see what color it is. It's like old faded newspaper. And just in a moment, it wasn't a miracle, but it's just like it glowed golden, because the light was behind it. And one of the priests who was working on this project with us, it took about 8 months to get all this done. Yeah, he just whispered aloud. He said, there it is, the Word of God. And I thought, well, there it is, the Word of God. So when we presented it, and the reason Pope Benedict was so interested, y'all know he was a scholar. What some people don't know, many of you may know that several times he submitted his resignation to John Paul II because he was a professor, and he'd been running the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, and the job he wanted was librarian of the library. He'd made that clear. He's a scholar, and he realized those who want to criticize our Bible, they say, well, you can't count on something that comes from the 300s, and it was adulterated, and it was changed, and they were amending this legend and altering it and manipulating it. So all of a sudden, something comes along 150 years later, and you start studying, and you see, almost mark for mark, word for word, it matches up. So if this was being adulterated, what happened for 150 years? They kept it very true to the original Gospels. So Pope Benedict was interested because this was part of authenticating the very Scripture that our entire faith is based on Jesus, but we know about Jesus from the Scripture. And so that's why he was so interested. But this scene, so they bring it out, and because he's a scholar, they bring out 2 leaves, and they bring out the one on the left, which is one of the notable things. On that leaf, the Gospel of Luke ends and the Gospel of John begins. And as you all know, so they were already in this order, even at that time, the Gospels in that order. And as you know, the beginning of the Gospel of John sums up our whole faith. It used to be said at the end of every Mass, right? Sums up the whole faith. So he starts reading it. Now, and I'm getting to the end of this. When my daughter was in first grade, on the way to school, we learned the Guardian Angel Prayer, and we would say it together. She got a little older, and we learned the 23rd Psalm. And I would start as we pulled out of the driveway, the Lord is my shepherd. And she would say, and there's nothing I shall want. And we'd go through the 23rd Psalm. She got a little older, and we learned the 27th Psalm, which is much harder than the 23rd Psalm. It's about 3 times as long. But back then, my memory was better, and I could, the Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life, of whom shall I be afraid? She gets to 9th grade. Now here, she's 16. When she was 14, I said, Elizabeth, let's swap it up. How about on the way to school, we learn and we recite the prologue of the Gospel of John? So for 2 years, we've been driving along saying, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. And it goes on. It's beautiful, beautiful. And so all of a sudden, he's doing this, and right near that, I reached over during that picture, and I said, you know what he's reading? And she nodded, yeah, I know what he's reading, Daddy. And I thought, okay, if my life ends now with the Vicar of Christ, okay, reading from the oldest copy of it in the world, well, this has been a good thing. So
where this is stored it's right out of the Tom Cruise movie. You go down one elevator, and I don't like elevators. I don't like small elevators especially. We went down 3 small elevators. You go down one elevator, you go over, you go down another elevator, you go over, you go down another elevator, and unlike 60 Minutes, Frank's trying to show off to his big brother, I'm going to pull out this papyrus and just show it to you right here and now. And he did, and it was beautiful. We were alone together in the room for a very short period of time, no pictures, obviously, but it's a holy document, right? So it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So now we're going to move on to something a little bit, Catholic apostolates. So as we all are involved with apostolates, they're like NGOs or private enterprises, businesses that are nonprofit working for the church. Talk about your focus on apostolates. You mentioned Catholic education. Obviously, that's an important part. But what do you think about apostolates, and why are you involved?
I think, first of all, we're all disciples. We're all apostles. We're supposed to be going forth with the message of God. And many in here are involved in apostolate. I think for a lot of us, a lot of it is reactive, and that's okay. You need to react when Providence puts something in your path, like happened actually with the papyrus. But I think it's helpful to be intentional and to really try to think through. And I think of a Venn diagram. For me, I'm looking for where's the leverage. I mean, Tim's in the real estate business. Okay, you can get a much higher return on your money. All of y'all, anybody in business knows. You apply some leverage, you get a lot more results. A little more risky, but you can get a lot more results. So I'm looking for where's the leverage? Where can you move the needle? And then within the church, actually within society. And what part of that do I feel called to? Because I think the personal vocation, really asking God, if not every day, on a very frequent occasion, Lord, what are you calling me to do? That's what Tim was asking his guardian angel. When you're constantly communicating with God and with the angels, don't be surprised if they give you some guidance. For me, because I've been involved in a number of secular things, but at some point in my life, I realized, even if I weren't Catholic and I were just looking historically, there's been no institution in the history of civilization that's had as much positive influence as the Catholic Church. I just don't think there's another one that exists. And so once you sort of, I tend to think deductively and in sort of an ordered manner. Once you say that, well, then how do we make the church strong? And as strong as she is, most Catholics I know don't really know their faith. Most parishes aren't all that effective. We're losing our knowledge and our understanding about how to create families. And so what do we do about that? Because we have this treasure, but we are, amidst these beautiful signs of hope we've seen the last couple of days here, we are kind of declining. We grow, but we grow slower than the population and the fervency. So what do you do? And this is one of the areas where obviously K through 12 education. I think there was a chart shown today, but for school choice, it's just getting decimated. It's growing in Florida, but it's getting decimated. And we need to really be thinking innovatively. I think the education industry might undergo more transformation from K through 12 all the way up through university and graduate. I hope it goes through more transformation than almost any other industry out there right now, because I think it needs it. We don't have a scalable, replicable model, in my opinion, for Catholic education around the country. There are a few small efforts. I'm interested in the hybrid, and I'm helping some hybrid schools. I'm interested in online, whatever, but I think we got to be real innovative. We tend to destructure our school systems kind of like the public school system structure. We got a superintendent, and we kind of command control and all of that sort of thing. I know y'all started one independent of the diocese, and we did that in Atlanta also. Not in any sort of, there's no animosity or ill will or anything toward the diocese. It's just like we need to run lean and be innovative and be able to create this. So, K through 12 education is a real area of focus, but faith formation in general, I don't know that our parishes, I'm really getting hyper-focused on parish effectiveness. That, for 99% of the Catholics, some people read a lot, some people go to conferences and stuff, but for 99% of the believers, most of their exposure is in the parish. And the only person this is a criticism against is me, because whatever I'm not doing at my parish that I should be doing, it starts there. When Chesterton said, "What's the problem with the world? It's me." So that's all. But we're all involved in this, and I just think we have our sights sort of set on mediocrity and the cultural accoutrement of our Catholicism. And we don't really understand it, and we're not really operating at the effectiveness that we should. One of the things I'm emphasizing is I do believe that increased reverence has incredible effects. You see this particularly among young people. If you're looking, what have we got as a competitive advantage as a church versus watching football that day? Okay, or any of the other distractions. We moved into our house 28 years ago. When we moved in, I would say 75% of the people in our neighborhood went somewhere on Sunday mornings 28 years ago. This is basically a generation, a little more than a generation, 28 years. Today, it's less than 10% to go anywhere. And my wife gets tired. I'm stopped saying it because we'll be walking along, and everybody's walking their dogs with a coffee in their hand. And I'll say, I guess they're walking to church. She'll say, stop. I get it. They're not going to church. Yeah, it's just crazy, though. Everybody's just out, but nobody goes to church. So I think really thinking about where can we be effective and where the leverage is. There's several groups actually here. I also think as a church, I'm sorry, I'm taking a little bit of time, but I think that this is important. Because we're talking about AI at this conference. I don't believe the church, and this is going to sound like a horrible critique, but I don't mean it that way. I don't think we've caught up to the Industrial Revolution, okay? And by that I mean we were in Christendom was agrarian, all right, for like 1,800 years. You look at the stats about how many people were farmers, even in the year 1900. So we've got all these customs and ways of operating and ways of raising family. We haven't caught up to the to the Industrial Revolution in terms of how we're living our lives as Catholics. And one big change is, and this is where we all come into this, prior to the printing press, the only people who could read and write were the clergy. The word for clerical clerk means to be able to read and write. So they were the only ones. And so this whole lay involvement thing, we don't need to beat ourselves up for being a little slow on the uptake. It takes a while for cultures to be able to evolve. But one reason we delegated it all to the priest was for 1,500 years, they're the only ones who had books and could read and write. That's why they were advising kings and queens. They were the educated set. Well, now lay people are educated. And so I think we've really got to step up as lay people. We got to do the thinking that used to be done by the clerical set. And so whether it's, and I'll just have a shout out to a couple of, there's Fathers Acton Institute, which I'm involved in. There's the Ethics and Public Policy Center, which many of y'all are involved in. CUA's doing great stuff on marriage and the family, and they're about to launch a new endeavor for that. But these places where good, solid Catholic thinking and intellectual rigor is happening. Divine Mercy University, okay? They are diving straight into Catholic anthropology. What does it mean to be a human being? And this is the kind of stuff that Richard Weaver he wrote a book called Ideas Have Consequences. Ideas do have consequences. And we need to make sure that that Catholic anthropology and that Catholic understanding of the truth is out there and not just delegate that to a dicastery. Okay?
I told you it was good. That, Napa is all about lay apostolates, and Mark Rolina and his team are going to be organizing a conference to continue to assimilate these lay apostolates, because that's our secret weapon in America, and we got to transform that throughout the world. Let's go to film. So we got some people in here in the film business, Joe Gelshin, Larry Blandford, and their first statement, I introduced them last night. So how much money have you lost in the business? Not like how much money you made, how much money you lost. And we had David Henry, who's got a fund going out on film. I didn't see the guys today from Sycamore, but I know you've been involved with Sycamore. We all love movies. I've never really invested in movies. I turned the passion down when it came to my office. That's how brilliant I am. But Mel Gibson, what? Movies? No way. It only grossed $600 or $800 million. I don't know what it was. But tell me about your passion towards movies, Flannery O'Connor, and so forth.
Yeah, I had a crazy English teacher in high school who harassed the principal enough for her to be able to teach a course on Southern literature, and I got exposed to Flannery O'Connor. And I was raised in a family of entrepreneurs, so I wasn't necessarily bent toward literature and philosophy and all that, but I realized that's actually where my real love is. And for those of you who followed her, she's really quite something. Cardinal Dolan's a big fan of hers, but there are many people in the Catholic Church fans. It's a little bit similar, in my opinion, to the Richard Weaver quote about ideas have consequences. Art has consequences. Beauty has consequences. When you see something beautiful, it does change you. When you see there's a reason Shakespeare is still performed 500 years later. People who can see into, for that matter, there's a reason that the Bible still captivates. The stories and the insight into human nature. I mean, at the end of the day, every little child and every 95-year-old is still wondering about, why am I here and what's my purpose, and how can I grow in love and be assured that I am loved. And I think movies affect us like that. I hope we haven't passed the golden age of movies. I think we've passed the golden age of like Broadway shows. I think we've passed the golden age of opera. Some art forms come and go. I hope not, because I think movies are just fabulous. Having said that, it's a hard business. Sam Goldwyn, who is the G in MGM, and somebody once asked him, how do you know if a movie's going to be a hit? And he said, in this business, nobody knows anything. But you know what? That's kind of true for a lot. I mean, you build a hotel, you you have a pretty good idea it's going to be a hit, but you're always taking a chance. I mean, I talked at Napa about putting out in the deep. You always got to take some risk. So I think with art, you got to take some risk. And it's a little bit of a different business model because great art rarely pays for itself. It needs patronage. It's a different kind of economic model. Maggie Gallagher's here, and she established with Archbishop Corleone the Benedict XVI Institute for Sacred Music. And we've chatted about this. If you're, I mean, there's no way. Mozart died penniless. Okay? I mean, he had to give violin lessons to help feed his family because the symphonies weren't bringing in enough revenue. And so now, having said that, let's take Sycamore. There is good entertainment and storytelling that doesn't need to last 500 years. I mean, it's great if you create art that's watched or listened to. You got the Sistine Chapel that's looked at, 500 years later. That's great. But there's also, that's nice. It won't be here 500 years from now, but it's lovely. It's lovely. And to create stuff that's lovely and refreshing and invigorating and supportive of a Christian culture, that's really important. So that's what Walt Disney did. So to Sycamores, that's what Christian McGeegan wants to do is fill the gap that Disney vacated.
I agree with you, and I think we had two beautiful, essentially movie stars in the faith-based organization. Jonathan Rumi, Father Duffy said this, but he wasn't really exaggerating. The most famous person besides the Pope is Jonathan Rumi. 500 million people have watched him on The Chosen. And I've met him before. He's been in Napa before. But the pain and suffering that he has to go through by serving as Jesus on That Chosen is remarkable. And David Henry is 36 years old, and he's been in the movie business for 25 years. He started when he was 11. Now, Steph kind of holds me back a little bit, but I'm a big play nut, right? And that's why I'm in New York, one of the reasons. And I'll go on a play Saturday, Sunday. One day she left and needed to do something with our daughter, and I went to 3 plays in one day. And but what they're doing here in New York, we got to stop. Every single time you go to a play, legit play, they got to throw a same-sex couple in it. They got to throw a transgender person in it. They got to throw dysfunction in the plays that was never celebrated 100 years ago when they drafted the play. And this is why Sycamore, Mel Gibson, David Henry, Angel Studios, we got to fight back to this nonsense because they're retelling anthropology. It's like the original religion of the day that Monsignor Shea speaks about in his book. They're trying to reinvent what life is about. And we have to take that back. And even if we lose all of our money doing it, we'll at least have those movies in the can that our kids can watch. Steph and I love sitting at home with a glass of Trinitas.
Shameless plug.
And we sit in our living room. We have this little couch and this little television, not the big 120-inch deal, and we watch movies and series. The Gilded Age. This building was in the Gilded Age, by the way. 1891, Julie Wolf corrected me. But we have a joy, but every damn time they have to break it out. Even in the Gilded Age. It's like, get over it, guys. It didn't happen. And if it didn't, I don't want to know about it. And so we have to retell the story and because Jesus taught in parables, Harvard teaches in case studies, and one of the reasons we have this fine, holy man in front of us is to have each and every one of us try to emulate what he has done in our own lives to the extent that each of us have gotten a different gift or different talent to use, right?
Well,
that's what we need.
I'll tell you, I think and I'm challenging myself, including yesterday as I'm flying into Newark, and I see one of the beautiful old Catholic church. I'm assuming it was either Catholic or Episcopalian. You can tell by the style, but I think it was Catholic. And I'm flying in, as we're gonna land, and it's gorgeous. But I'm thinking that's got to be 120 years old. You could just tell by the vintage. And then I saw the Meadowlands, the sports complex. I mean our Georgia Dome where the Falcons play, that's a $2 billion building. $2 billion built 10 years ago, so I don't know what it costs today. $3 billion probably, right? And I think, what if just part of the money we all spend? And listen, I love sports, and I got season tickets to Georgia Bulldogs, and I love it, and I spend money on it.
I didn't know you were interested in football.
Okay. But that's. We're putting our money where our treasure is, and it's with our sports teams and our sports stadiums, and that's the kind of thing. And the Georgia Dome was subsidized by the taxpayer because it's, I guess, a public good. And meanwhile, the churches we build are not like they used to be, generally speaking, right? So I just think it's look, we're not doomed to this. We can, there's a moment happening in the church right now, in my opinion, mostly led by people younger than most of us, except for this table here, that's just lovely. And we've got a great moment for that, but I think we've got to figure that not all of it will make money. I think it's good to have the discipline of trying to make money on it, especially because, being a for-profit business forces a discipline that a nonprofit just doesn't necessarily have those kinds of checks and balances and urgency all the time. But some of it's got to be, and so as an example, EWTN's not a for-profit, and yet the formation, the entertainment, the stories they tell, that's got to be, you need patrons for that. And so I think this has to be part in our thinking as we allocate our stewardship. We need to be thinking those messages speak to the world, and they do matter to the world, and they do influence the world, and they do change the world. And the media is important, but particularly the storytelling we do.
On Saturday, I checked two scores, the University of Notre Dame and Georgia. Because I know if Georgia loses, I'm not going to be talking to Frank for the next Saturday, okay? He's a big SEC guy, and he told me the SEC is the only football league in the country. Everybody else is going to be wiped out. And I don't know how the University of Michigan and the Big 10 or the Big 40 or whatever they are ends up controlling UCLA and USC, but it is fascinating what's going on. Paying players, oh my God, don't get me started. But he is a big football fan. So I said, Frank, I'm going to come down to your house. If you ever want to get to know somebody, it's best to go visit them where they live. So Steph and I go down there. We have a great old time. This is probably 10 years ago. And he goes, we're going to go to a football game. We're going to tailgate, all that stuff. And he says, yeah, I got a little box there. The box holds 50 people. I mean, it was like a high school football stadium right there. I mean, it's like, what? He's got 50 people in his box, and everybody's there. His dad was alive, and his brother, and his wife, and this is part of their life. I mean, what else do you do in Atlanta? I told you this was going to get a little dicey.
I'll tell you this, more people moving to Atlanta yesterday and today than to California.
Yeah. We can have some fun here, Frank. Let's go. Well, you know what? California's politics are not great, but its weather really is great. And people say, how do you do in the hotel business? the best hotels I have are in California. All the regulation, all the nonsense, somehow it's like Italy. You can just get away with anything you want to do. It's like people come, right? But we're going to go to his beautiful wife, and she's a Southern belle. She's got that accent. Frank doesn't really have much of an accent, but she is exactly casted out of Hollywood as a Southern belle. And my mother was from the Midwest, Marquita Busch. She never stepped out of Clinton, Michigan, where she was born in the living room, seriously, and really was not a well-traveled woman until my dad died, and I took her wherever I went. She was going with me. So we had a great time, got her to meet the Pope and everything. But my mother was just infatuated with Sally, his wife, because she had never seen in live person a Southern belle like this. And she was just like, the accent, she was just always staring at her going, what? Because they used to come out to our desert house. But your wife has had some health challenges. If you meet Sally, she actually is stunning. You'd probably not see any health problems whatsoever. It's kind of like Steph and my daughter, Kenzie. She's stunning, but she has this chronic Lyme disease. And on any given day, she may not get out of bed, right? And tell us how that's gone. You had one child, and he likes leverage. So he had 8 grandchildren from one child. I like leverage. We had 2 children. We're not exactly the 8, 12 kids that many of you have out there. We have 11 grandchildren. So he and I are going back and forth. I lost track. I thought he had 7, but he's got 8 from one daughter. So talk about your family life. And one of the things I truly respect is Frank so wants to be with me and others in Rome and have all the fun. In some years, he just has to call up and he goes, I can't make it. Sally's going through a tough time. I can't make it over there. And that would be difficult for me. I'm sure I would do it, honey. Probably not as good as Frank. But he literally has to play it by ear whether he's leaving tomorrow or he's not. So tell us a little bit about your life and your joys and the mess at Christmas that you talked about this summer.
I got to marry an angel, so there's just no complaining. I mean, if you get an angel, and she really, I mean, people tell me, I think she may be the sweetest person I've ever met. So there's just no complaining. But I also think, I think a certain politician got in trouble earlier this year for referencing the Ordo Amoris, the order of love. But I think there is an order, and for me, obviously, if you're not praying to God, nothing's going to work, or work in accord with our nature. But next, if you're married, I mean, that's who comes next. I remember one time I was at a marriage retreat. We'd probably been married about 20 years by this, but we've been married 42 years now. But we've been married about 20 years, and for the first time, our priest said, your job as a spouse is to get your spouse to heaven. And I thought, I'm having a hard enough time with myself. That doesn't, and I don't control her. Plus, she's going to get there, and I've got to struggle in purgatory for years. But this whole idea, but what he was getting at, and I first heard Father Sirico use this term years ago. It was this other-directed behavior, behavior directed toward the welfare of another. And we all, and I know most of you have had great formation. Love's not an emotion; it's an act of the will. But this real idea of saying whatever, if love means you will the best for the other, and you're not, especially when it's your spouse, you're not really supposed to calculate that cost. So it's not worth calculating it. Don't waste time counting up what doesn't happen, right? And so, she's got, he was referencing Kinsey having the Lyme. Sally's got something, it's degenerative neuropathy and a bunch of autoimmune stuff. And it's just, she's been sick for 40 years. But we're joyful. We have a great, so this is just not worth, it's a blessing. It's a blessing. Everything's a grace, everything's a grace.
So I'm jumping over a couple of sections because I think we covered them, but the last one that I think is one of the most important is your faith life. And what do you talked about praying to God, guardian angels, but tell us about your life, your protocol, what you do to keep yourself close to God and to your family.
Sure. I do want to say one thing about the married thing, though, and the kids. We're really blessed with these grandchildren. I also know how hard it was to go for 7 years and barely be able to have one child. And we're fortunate we had the one child, because some people can't have any children. And so I think, especially among really faithful Catholics, I think we ought to really celebrate the children that come and really be united in solidarity with couples when they don't come. So that's just, it's interesting. Father was saying some nice things in the intro, and I thought, look, I'm just practicing. I mean, the stuff that he was saying that was good, I'm practicing. And I think there's a reason we talk about practicing the faith. And there's certain, in most of the professions, the historic professions, a doctor practices medicine. It's a really difficult thing that you never quite perfect. And if you don't practice it, you will lose it. So you have to practice the violin, you have to practice medicine, you practice law, and you got to practice your faith. So if you really got, if you kind of take that to heart, what does that mean to practice? We know what it means to practice the violin or to practice football, right? What does it mean to practice? Well, it means, you should see how Kirby Smart has got their practices in order every day down to the minute, right, of how much they're spending on this drill and this drill. So I think it's just worthwhile. We don't have to have it down to the minute, but to say, what is our practice? I think there are a couple of things that are essential, and then the church, being just this bounty of spiritual treasure that it is, offers a lot of other things that one may choose, but I don't know how you do it without daily prayer. I mean, even in the Our Father, give us this day our daily bread. The manna melted away each day to remind us, look, every day. Well, can't I just store some up and then I don't have to tomorrow? No, every day. So I think it starts with daily prayer. For me, I also do a daily examination of conscience. I mean, I try to, at the end of the day, go through which, usually, and it has to generally do with human transactions. Well, the human transactions I've had, like on a day like today, I got to go through like 50 different, and usually it's nothing, but sometimes you say, I didn't need to say that comment. It's not always a mortal sin, but it's like, did I really need to make that joke or gossip, that little bit that didn't quite look like gossip, but maybe I did it, And when you're rigorous with yourself, well, all of a sudden you realize it's like practicing that piece of the piano that you stumble over every time, and then you work on it. Finally, you can play those notes because you practiced it. So I think those two components, I think regular confession. I mean, that's part of the day. You do the daily examination of conscience, but regular confession, people have different frequencies. I do an annual retreat, and I think it's good to know the Bible. I got a lot of friends who of my vintage, right? I got a lot of friends that can basically recite Godfather 1 and Godfather 2. Okay, we just all know that movie, and I got you a Godfather line for whatever comes up, and I can quote Hyman Roth, I can quote, you name it, okay. And that's fine, or Talladega Nights, but
What was the last one?
But Talladega Nights? Oh, okay. Anyway, it's not. It's.
I'm praying the rosary, Frank. I'm not watching that show.
It won't be watched 500 years from now. But what would be nice, and I think Abraham Lincoln could do this. Okay, when something came up, he had a biblical reference because that's what he was reading all the time. Okay. And if we really demonstrate that, not in a preachy kind of way, but if when we were speaking to others, it's like, yeah, when his brothers threw Joseph in the well, that's how you felt like, And I mean, you have all these references that you can make because you really know the Bible. I think it's a great thing to do. But I think there are two secret things. One's like the house specialty, that you only know if you go to the house, and the people that go to the house all the time tell you got to order the blank, right? That's not even on the menu. Daily Mass. Daily Mass is just like nothing else. And I've given a couple of talks in my parish about it. We really don't tell them it's not on the menu. We actually have had our pastor during Lent encourage people to go, to try it one day a week, because hopefully what they'll realize, wow, that was nice, and hey, it didn't take an hour, right? And
unless Father Christie is doing the Mass.
But but that's just and honestly, people, I want to be very careful. We know that it's not an obligation. There are plenty of people in heaven who did not go to daily Mass. It is not an obligation. I just think it's one of the coolest things we have to offer on the menu of the spiritual treasury of the church.
I started going to daily Mass when I was in 3rd grade because the nun told me, we should go to Mass more than once a week. So I figured, okay, double down. I'm going to do it every day. And I'd get up and I'd deliver my newspapers, the Detroit News and the Detroit Free Press, and get them all out to the customer, and then go to Mass, and then come back, eat breakfast in 5 minutes, and make it to school at 8:30 in the morning. And then when I went to college, maybe once a week I'd go to Mass besides Sunday, but not really daily Mass. And then I saw Tom Monahan when I was 35 years old, so 35 years ago. And I said, the CEO, the founder of Domino's Pizza goes to Mass every day? And then there was Carl Karcher from Carl's Jr. Daily Mass every day? Are you kidding me? I'm a lawyer. I'm billing by the hour. I can't waste a half hour at a Mass. That could cost a couple $100. But anyway, I went back to Mass. I'm just trying to tell you guys this. You charge your Tesla every day. Charge your soul every day. Right?
Well, one of the I'd mentioned competitive advantages. What in the church, because a lot of other things can offer entertainment or diversion or whatever, right? We got the Eucharist. I mean, just there's no other thing on the planet that has the Eucharist, and therefore we have transcendence. It's just something. But you know what's cool about the Monahan thing? So, and this is how whatever you say to your child, or your grandchild, or to your friend, and maybe what we're saying now. So a buddy of mine told me about Monahan going, because my buddy was going to daily Mass. And of course I thought, I don't have the time. There's no way I could do that. And Monahan supposedly heard that Don Shula did it, okay? And he's saying, oh, wait a minute, if the guy that won the Super Bowl with the Dolphins, okay, can find time. Well, you know who Don Shula heard had gone to Mass? Vince Lombardi. Okay, so it's just like this heritage chain of people who said, well, if he could do it, maybe I could. So it's wondrous how that spreads.
I think the three things, daily Mass, rosary, and confession. I don't know if we had confession here, Mark. I know you guys can ask any priest, but that's one of our brand standards. We normally have confession and the CFRs and all that stuff. It's a very important thing. It's one of the few things. I was talking to Charles Koch once, and he's fascinated with the Catholic Church. he's read Augustine and he's read Thomas Aquinas. He loves Sirico. He loves Frank Hanna. His CEO is a Catholic. His CEO's wife is a daily communicant. I mean, the guy isn't religious, but he's fascinated about the Catholic Church. And one day I told him, well, you know, Charles, we have confession. And he says, what is that? And I know he knew what it was, but he just was wanting me to explain it to him. I said, well, you know, Charles, you go to a priest, you confess your sins, he gives you a penance, which is usually a, you know, Hail Mary or Our Father or stop drinking for the rest of your life or something like that. and your sins are forgiven. And he said, really? And this was where I know he wasn't faking it. How can I get some of that stuff? Right? You know what Jonathan Rumi told us? Become Catholic. So don't take for granted those critical things that we have in our faith. And I like to take every opportunity I can to explain that to people, because this daily mass thing, especially if you're in danger, like Frank, me, and a lot of you guys out there, you're trying to do stuff the devil does not want to happen. And so he's going to do everything he can. But with daily mass and the rosary, he cannot touch us. He cannot touch us. He can try, but he cannot touch us. But we stop that, and we're subjecting ourselves to exposure. I walk the streets yesterday with a procession, of course. But during my daily walks, I try to walk wherever I can in New York. I love walking in New York. Take that rosary out. People look at you and they go, what is he doing? It's the streets of, what is he going to get mugged? He's walking, nobody mugs me walking around with the rosary. But you're teaching people every step of the way. As all of you in that procession last night, did you see these people? They were like, the guy had his hat off over his heart. He knew what was going on. People just dropping to their knees, everything. It seems simple to all of us, but it's evangelization. And that's why we're honoring this guy, because he's done it. He's built churches. He's built schools. He had 15 institutions. He was really involved with the Busch School before I got involved with the school, but the business school. It was just a business school at the time. And he was the one that got involved. I go, wait a minute, what's Frank doing over in the business school? I want to be in the business school. And then I go in there, and I didn't know I was going to be $15 million late after the deal. But no, it was great. Andrew Abella has done an amazing job at the school. Amazing. It's only getting better. Yesterday, our meeting at the Board of Visitors was amazing. So anyway, thank you guys for our attention.
Hang on.
Thank you.
I got one thing.
Okay.
There's one other secret. Having deep and abiding friendships with other believers. Tim mentioned that we met in Rome. There was another lunch we had. And by the way, if you can form these friendships on pilgrimages, even better. We were on a pilgrimage to Rome. Another pilgrimage we were on, Mexico City, to Our Lady of Guadalupe. We went and had lunch for 2 hours and talked about a gathering of Catholics that could inspire people and get them more involved. And Tim, being a man of action, right, got Napa Institute going, where that kind of friendship happens. And so somebody said, well, how do you get an award like that? And I thought, we have a friend like Tim, right? But it really is. I mean, don't underestimate when you go on a pilgrimage. This is a pilgrimage, okay? I mean, a lot of us flew here, right? And you got to go through the perils of travel and all that. It's a lot easier than when they were, doing the Santiago de Compostela 1,000 years ago. But still, it's a pilgrimage. And anytime you can go on a pilgrimage, you take yourself out of your normal setting, and you can make friends. And that's what happened with he and I, and there's just nothing like it. And so I started reflecting, because somebody, he may be here. Tim's got paparazzi who takes pictures of him, and so I got a copy of that picture. But I was thinking after the procession yesterday, we were all walking and Jesus was with us. But I thought, there's another time in the Bible when some Christian friends were walking and Jesus was with them, right? What was that? Emmaus. And I thought, well, that's another secret to keeping faithful. And I think about the number of walks you and I have had. And so I got to show you something real quick. Hold that for me. So this picture that a buddy of ours, I think he sent you one too. So I didn't have time to get it framed, because I started thinking about this just the other day. And you can come up and look at it because you won't be able to see it. But hold this for me. So this is a picture of two guys on a bench. And I like the fact that you don't know who they are because you just see the back of them. Okay? But they've just walked for about 45 minutes. And we prayed down at the grotto together. And then we're getting older, so we sat down on a bench. And I put a title under this, a short rest on the road to Emmaus. But you can come up and see it. But this is on the bench. You got that's the back of me and Tim. And I thought, well, that's one of the keys to practicing your faith, is to walk on the road to Emmaus with good friends.
While we were sitting on that bench, that wasn't the purpose of our talk, Charlie Kirk had just been shot. And he was still alive. And people said he was going to live. It was going to be a miracle. And I said, I saw it. It's not going to happen. And so we remembered him yesterday in Mass, and what a beautiful thing. But he does like to go on walks, probably because we got older a little bit. We're walking around creating things in Rome and also at the Augustine Institute and so forth. So, hey, we're going to have the award, so bring that up, Christina. And Mark, if you want to come up. And we're giving him the Napa Institute Award for Virtue in the Marketplace, which, of course, he has a lot. And we'll take a quick photo of that. Mark, run up here. And our normal Trinitas wine with his name on it. We'll ship this.
I've never had one with my name.
Yeah, here you go.
Okay, here we go. Thanks, buddy. God bless you.
Okay, now, Rich, you're up right next. Yeah, you're gonna. We got a pretty good schedule going here. We're not too bad. We're going to wander around. We got a special treat. A couple of very important ecclesiastical leaders are here, and Rich is going to introduce them as we close.
Yeah, before I do that, I did want to say two quick things about Frank Hanna. The first, if you haven't read Frank's book, it is one of the best books on philanthropy and stewardship I have ever read. It's called What Your Money Means and How to Use It. So wherever you're at in your career or in your philanthropic journey, I highly, highly, highly recommend you read his book. And secondly, and they alluded to this a little bit, Frank knows ball. I was telling Tim Ristoff, one of my favorite, whenever I see Frank, there's a billion things to talk about, but I just want to talk about college football. I'm a Notre Dame guy. He's a Georgia guy. And I'll cheer for Georgia, especially when they're playing Alabama. I'll tell you that much. Right. So anyway, Tim and I were talking. We wanted to get some really special guests to close us in prayer. So we were thinking that Cardinal Dolan and Monsignor Landry would be great fits for that. But unfortunately, Cardinal Dolan couldn't be here tonight. And we hear from Monsignor Landry all the time. So Let's bring up their brothers to close us in prayer. Can we get Pat Dolan and Scott Landry up here to close us in prayer for the evening?
As His Eminence's brother comes up, we totally thought this was a skit that we were going to impersonate our brothers. So we had that all planned out. So,
welcome to America's Church. Those of you on Sirius Radio 126, America's Paris, thank you for being here. We love you, we welcome you, and we want you forever, every day. What a great group, huh?
Totally
I mean,
great.
you know, despite the fact of the cold steak, etc. But it really is a tremendous group. Thank you all for being here, and it is good. And when I think of the theme this year, you know, AI, I first think of the steak sauce. But then I think of my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri, which we are so blessed to have recently been privileged to have the Augustine Institute at our home archdiocese. And those of you that don't know about it, I know they're here tonight, and most of you do, but it's a beautiful thing. So we are grateful to be here. And of course, we do the bear hug. I love you all.
I think you'd look good in red too, Patrick.
Thank you.
So there's a real priest in the back, and there's a real cardinal in the back. So to end us tonight, Cardinal Marengo will give us a final blessing.
Amazing. Well, I was very much inspired by the witness of all of you, and I'm very grateful to Cardinal Dolan, who invited me to New York and to the Napa Institute. And by listening to your stories, I'm really inspired. And the image with which we concluded, the two of you sitting there, one of the best things in life is to walk to Mass with a good friend. I think I wish many people will hear that in Mongolia, because in Mongolia our faith is still new, and I wish many people, many entrepreneurs would hear your stories and will grasp a bit of the beauty of our faith in action, as you have witnessed tonight. So let us all thank the Lord for His goodness to us, and let us invoke His blessing, so that by the power of His Holy Spirit, we may continue practicing our faith and showing the beauty of it, and attracting many more people to the flock of the church. The Lord be with you, and through the motherly intercession of Mary, may God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen.